And there is also the point system, right? So a Watson can choose when he competes in a contest whether to go only for the money, for the USDC, or also to the points. Can you explain like how the points play in this like a way of becoming senior Watson?
Yeah. So the points are really important. And, I say it's like an ELO ranking in chess or like in a video game, but it's not quite like that. And I guess, how do I start explaining it? Every contest that occurs, everyone brings their points with them. So let's say you have 100 points, I have 200 points. Or let's say you have 200, I have 100, and we bring our points together. And so that contest now has 300 points available in it. And basically, that means you brought 200 in, I brought 100 in, you're expected to earn 67% of the pot is what that means. I'm expected to earn 33%. If you outperform and you earn, 87% of the pot, or I'm trying to make the math work here, I'm not sure it's that easy, but let's say you earn somewhere in that ballpark, 85%, 87%, you're going to come away from that contest with 250 points
with more
instead
points
of 200. I'm going to come away with 50 instead of 100. And it basically just averages that in. So if that was a 2-week contest, then you get 14 days worth of 250 points in your ranking. And maybe you had a different contest that was 14 days and you earned, 350 points. That means 14, 250, 350. Your average points that's actually going to show up on the leaderboard is 300. So basically every time a contest occurs, everyone bets all of their points essentially by competing. And depending on how much of the pot you take, which you could think of in dollar terms, or you can think of it in kind of like points terms on the back end, depending on how much of that pot you take, that's how much will contribute to your ranking, will average in to your ranking, I guess. And to answer your other question around choosing to compete for points, we thought it was really important to allow people to opt out of the points competition whenever they want to. And that kind of goes back to the, Chris Michel wedding scenario or whatever it was, where he was only able to spend like 3 days in our contest instead of 7 days or 10 days. We don't want to disincentivize him from spending those 3 days. So if you can show up and you can only spend 3 days out of 10, it's probably not going to be good for your ranking if you compete for points, because other people are spending 10, you're spending 3 days. So we thought it was really important to make sure
you might lose your senior Watson. You might lose your lead Watson if you lose all these points. If you basically your points are decreased, you will lose your ranking and you cannot become a lead senior Watson. We also know that you did some change where if you have more points, you're like lead senior Watson that I paid more, right? And if you have less points, you have your lead senior Watson that this is something that we'll also discuss later. So yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, and it's just to make sure that we want people to compete even when they can only do a partial competition, because in those 3 days, maybe they find a critical bug that no one else finds. And then that's going to be super impactful. And that's kind of like one of the biggest goals of the audit contest, at least in Sherlock's view, is how do we make sure we maximize the amount of vulnerabilities that could possibly be found in this contest? And that means, okay, if you can only spend 2 days, we got to make it really worthwhile for you to spend those 2 days. Okay, if you're a random person that we've never heard about before, like HE1M in the optimism contest we ran earlier this year, we need to make sure it makes sense for you to compete in that contest, and we don't force you to jump through a bunch of hoops before you can compete, because that person is going to show up once in a blue moon. We know they're going to find, I think HE1M got paid $125,000 for finding one critical vulnerability in the optimism code base. And we need to make sure that we are incentivizing that person to join and maximizing their chances of joining.
Super cool. And it's very important actually for all the listeners that want to become lead senior Watsons and enjoy the fixed pay. You really need to think through before you choose USDC or USDC plus points, because I talked with Roj. I mean, he has different nicknames. that's the story, because he has a different nicknames in Code Arena. Hola the Wolfer, and in Sherlock he's like Roj Red Dwarf, because he had to recreate a new account, a new wallet, and compete again, because he screwed up in the beginning, because he didn't know the system of like points and USDC, and then his rankings got like not very good. So we created a new profile and started doing the audits from there, compete with points, where he was when he was aware for the points, and now he's like lead senior Watson, which is interesting.
That's really interesting. I didn't know it was because he messed up originally on his main account. That's interesting.